The age-old Dell versus Apple rivalry. So how does the latest M2 MacBook Pro 14 and the latest 13th generation Dell XPS stack up against each other? I don't know. First off, I think we need to talk about the specs and the ordering options for these two computers, because in a surprising move, the base model Apple isn't actually the most expensive option that we'll talk about today. I know that that's normally Apple's the expensive one. I know that's normally the thing, but that's not it today. So the M2 MacBook Pro comes in at $1999. For that money, you'll get the latest 10-core M2 Pro processor, a 16-core GPU, 16 gigabytes of unified memory, and a 512 gigabyte solid-state drive. Now, we will talk more about the physical construction and the specs in a bit, but internally, those are the big selling points. The new XPS comes in at a base model price of $2399. Now, this specific price I don't consider to be set in stone. Dell is constantly updating certain spec options after their products hit the market, so if you watch this video months after it comes out, this might actually be cheaper. But as of today, the cheapest model you can get is $2399. And that base model comes with a 14-core Intel i9 13900H processor, NVIDIA 4070 8GB graphics card, 16GB of DDR5 RAM, and a 512GB solid-state drive. Now that's just the cheapest base options for both computers. It is a much different story when we look at the highest end. Now, the top end of the MacBook is a 12-core M2 Max processor, 38-core GPU, 96 gigabytes of unified memory, and an 8-terabyte solid-state drive. That machine, that little old laptop that fits all that crazy stuff into this kind of a space, that comes in at a pittance of $62.99. And oh, yes, I felt gross calling that a pittance. That's a crazy amount of money for a laptop. The XPS doesn't have as many upgrade options. You can't upgrade the processor or the graphics card, but you can get up to 64 gigabytes of DDR5 memory and an 8-terabyte solid-state drive, combining all of that with an upgraded 3.5K OLED touchscreen display for $46.96. Let's move over to the performance, and pulling some benchmarks from folks way better at running those benchmarks than myself, it does look like the i9 is the more powerful chip when compared to the M2 Pro. Now the M2 Max, maybe that's a different conversation again. I'm not speccing these all the way out. I have the M2 Pro and I have the 13th gen i9. Now I don't know that saying the i9 is more powerful is actually saying that much, because any processor can be more powerful than any other. It just takes more heat and more power to do so. And while the i9 does make the bar chart go up, it doesn't have the power optimization of the M2. And part of a laptop's job is making the battery last as long as possible, right? And having that long life with usable power. Graphically wise though, I will have to swap over and give that to the XPS 15. Having a dedicated graphics card is really useful for a whole range of topics, especially if you want to run any specifically graphically intense programs that aren't already optimized for Apple's ARM-based processor architecture. But if you do primarily use programs that have been optimized, I would say usable performance across the board for both machines is about equal. However, when we start looking at the bodies of the laptops themselves, there are some very important differences. The XPS 15 has the same design layout that XPSs have had the past few years. It's got a very sleek design, a very comfortable carbon fiber top, some of the best keyboard typing experience around, and it has high-powered Thunderbolt 4 ports. Additionally, it has an SD card slot and a headphone jack built right into the laptop body. Before Apple updated their MacBooks, this was the definition of what somebody that makes money with their computer needs. And some folks might call that person a professional. But Apple did update their laptops, and now the MacBook has ports rivaling and surpassing the XPS, especially in one notable area. The MacBook also has Thunderbolt 4, it has SD card slot, and it has a headphone jack. But most importantly for me, it comes with a built-in HDMI port. And yes, the Dell does come with a USB-A and HDMI dongle, which is much appreciated. But look, I literally use this HDMI port every single day, and I personally, yes, this is subjective, welcome to the subjectivity of YouTube opinions, I think that all laptops need this to be built in. The rest of the MacBook body is also no slouch, another amazing keyboard, probably the best trackpad in the business, an okay-ish feeling top. I still don't like how jagged and sharp the edges of this laptop are, but you will not find build quality rivaling this in other laptop brands. I mean, one of those keynotes, speaking of build quality, is in this XPS 15. It came to me again with a wobbly trackpad and a very annoying creak in the hinge whenever it's open and closed. Listen to this. I hate that. And I'm absolutely willing to chalk that up to a specific problem with my personal laptop that I bought, and it's probably not a good sample to tar the whole XPS lineup with. But I've had several XPSs with wonky trackpads over the past few years, and I've literally never had a build quality problem with a MacBook. Physically though, I do prefer typing on the XPS. The slight angle of the body combined with that carbon fiber top is probably the best typing experience that I've found on a laptop thus far. It's really good. I typed this whole script on this laptop because I love typing on the XPS. Display-wise, it's not really a contest though. The XPS still has some of the slightest bezels on the planet. It has Windows Hello built into the top camera, and it has a gorgeous display. But it's capped at 60 Hz no matter how much you spend. And if you do spend that extra money to get the nicer display, you're gonna lose a very big chunk of your battery life. And you're gonna lose out on brightness going from 500 nits to 400 nits if you upgrade. On the other hand, the Apple display is the nicest display that you will find on a laptop, period. It's insane that they put this kind of display even on the base model of the 14-inch MacBook. It goes up to 120 Hz refresh rate, has a billion color combination, and can go up to 1600 nits of HDR max brightness. This display is just amazing. And it's a laptop, it's for work. I try not to be swayed by screen performance too much, but this screen is just too good. Plus, speaker-wise, you also cannot compete with Apple. I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to, so don't worry about the everyday dad getting into a laptop speaker manufacturing business. Is that a thing? There is nothing wrong with the XPS speakers. They sound fine in a vacuum. It's just not the same. Also, when we talk about battery life, the M2 MacBook Pro 14 is insane. I never worry about this dying on me, even if I have to travel or work for long hours in the office without being able to plug in. The Dell, on the other hand, is fine, and it has usable battery life, but it suffers from normal Windows problems of having simply okay battery life, but not battery life that I would ever depend on if needed. You also lose a really big chunk of power the second you unplug it for a wall. Yes, you can manage that around a little bit, but remember, every bit you bump up the performance, you bump down a chunk of your usable life of the laptop. Practically speaking though, the two laptops are remarkably similar in actual use, except for three seemingly small differences. But these are differences nonetheless, and they pushed me into an actual recommendation. You can upgrade the RAM and solid state drive on the XPS if you want to. It's really easy, and yes, it sucks that Apple doesn't let you do this. I think that's a huge issue, especially with the Pro machines having the space that they could let you do this. One downside though is the XPS 15 uses high-end DDR5 RAM, and while I don't mean to say that it's bad in a performance way, it's bad in that older sticks of memory are incompatible, so you don't really save too much money upgrading this yourself. Number two, the Dell, for better or worse, has an Intel processor, and that means if you are using this for anything other than browsing very low-powered, light footprinted websites, these fans will turn on. And if you try something as radical as playing World of Warcraft Classic or video editing from this machine, those fans will be very loud and very annoying, and the thermal performance is not something that I'm happy with on the XPS 15. And then number three, something I didn't realize or consider about this is that when you plug the XPS into that HDMI adapter, the graphics card the computer uses by default on external displays is the integrated Intel graphics. That means 60 Hz refresh rates on even high-end gaming monitors. I'm sure there is a way to set the NVIDIA card to be the primary, but it wasn't easily accessible to me, and all I have to do to get maximum external display power on my MacBook is I just plug in an HDMI cable. But frankly, neither of these two laptops are bad. They are both good laptops that will suit you well, but in a shocking twist, I don't recommend either of these. These are fine, don't buy them, because there is a laptop out there that costs $500 less than the Mac and almost $1,000 less than the Dell, and it's just as useful. Hold on, I've been hiding it here the whole time. It's the M1 MacBook Pro 14. This can be had for $1,539 refurbished from Apple. That gets you the exact same body and most of the same capabilities as the M2 MacBook, with all of the other better stuff that we already talked about over the Dell. If you are looking for a travel powerhouse of a computer, don't get either of the two laptops we've talked about today, and get the M1 MacBook Pro 14. It's literally the best value professional laptop ever made. I have no problems recommending this. And if you want to see more about the M1 MacBook Pro 14, click here. Click, 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 click. Thanks for watching.